Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times. Today's date is Monday, May 20th of 2024. We'll start with the weather, as we always do. Across the Cape and Islands, today you can expect intervals of clouds and sunshine with a high of 59. Tonight and the overnight mainly clear with a low of 50 degrees. Tomorrow, Tuesday, turning sunny, humid and milder, high of 67 degrees. Nice day tomorrow. Low of 56 in the overnight. Wednesday also a very nice day, high in the low 70s, low in the mid 50s. Nice with sunshine and a few clouds on Wednesday. Thursday, high of 68, low of 56, mostly cloudy and breezy with possible thunderstorm. On Friday, partly sunny, pleasant and warmer. A very nice week ahead of us with plenty of sunshine, except for maybe Thursday having a little bit of rain. But low 70s, high 60s all week. And if you can, get outside and feel the sun on your face. The sunrise will happen at 5:17 a.m. today. It will set at 7:59 p.m. We will have 14 hours and 42 minutes of daylight. The moon will rise at 5:19 p.m. and set at 3:35 a.m. Now we'll move to the front of the paper, where the news and, of course, the lottery results are kept. And we read these lottery results because listeners ask for them. If there's something you would like read to people who are blind or print disabled, you can email us at info@audiblelocalledger.org or call us at 508-539-2030. And we'll consider reading it. And if you miss any of the information that we share in our readings, you can go to audiblelocalledger.org. In the upper right corner is the Archived Readings tab. If you click on that, you'll find a week's worth of our newspaper readings that you can catch up on anything that you might have missed. Also, our shopping guides are up there all week, so you can find out what's on sale at the grocery store. We've just added Walgreens as well. Now, for the latest results of the lottery, we go to the masslottery.com website because the Cape Cod Times goes to press too early to give them to you, and if you ask for them, you deserve the latest. So for the numbers game of Sunday, March 19th of 2024, in the midday drawing, the numbers were 0, 2, 5, 7. Again, yesterday's midday drawing of the numbers game, 0, 2, 5, 7. The evening drawing of the numbers game for Sunday, May 19th, 7, 7, 5, 2. Again, last night's numbers game results. In the evening drawing, 7, 7, 5, 2. Mass cash results for Sunday, May 19th. 9, 15, 24, 27, and 35. And Lucky for Life rounds out our lottery results for Sunday, May 19th with 6, 16, 32, 34, and 41, with 12, the bonus number. Good luck to all who play, and please remember us if you win. From the cover of today's Cape Cod Times, dated May 20th, "No need to leave once you're here," reads the headline. Margaritaville to open in Hyannis by Denise Coffey in Hyannis. The light blues, greens, and purple outlining the temporary lobby door at the Cape Codder Resort and Spa hint at the transformation going on inside the storied resort. After more than 70 years as the Cape Codder, new owner Lincris Hotel Corporation has embarked on creating its lifestyle resort, Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod. Since purchasing the resort in December of 2022, Lincris has been working on the remodel. The lobby has been gutted, metal studs were put in place. The fireplace will be replaced with a giant flip-flop. The hand-blown glass chandelier has been donated to the Sandwich Glass Museum, and in its place will be a chandelier made of margarita glasses. The studs mark out the spaces for what will one day be a huge open lobby, Joe Merchant Coffee and Provisions, and the 250-seat Landshark Bar and Grill. The original structure, which was built in the 1950s, was compartmentalized, said Brian Anderson, Senior Vice President of Operations for Lincris. The design team is transforming the place into something wide open, which is a signature of Margaritaville resorts. When people walk into the finished lobby, they'll be able to see the shop and the restaurant. Big glass windows in the courtyard will allow guests to look out in sunlight to stream in. Construction delays and supply chain issues have moved back the transition date to late summer, Anderson said, but the resort is open for business. All but 2 rooms have been renovated, the water park's been upgraded, and a feeding frenzy snack bar has been added. There's a giant misconception in the local community that we're closed, Anderson said. The changes that have been made speak volumes about the redo. Guest rooms have been redone with white walls, blue and green rugs, new desks, bureaus, and furniture. Renovated bathrooms have double sinks with signature whale tail faucet handles. Bathroom tiles are blue, and mirrors are etched with rope and knot designs. Rooms look out over courtyards or pool areas. Even the linens have parakeets on them, General Manager Rachel Thayer said. The corridors are just as cheerful with white wainscoting. The blue and green rug with wave theme runs throughout. All guest room doors are a bright blue with palm tree cutouts. Landscaping will turn one outdoor courtyard space into a palm tree-lined activity area, according to Thayer. Palm trees that thrive in Zone 7 will be planted in the near future. Other outdoor areas will be renovated with fire pits and entertainment areas. You walk in and you're in a resort, said Thayer. There's no need to leave once you're here. Still to come, Lindquist plans to renovate and remodel the approximately 18,000 square feet meeting space. Changes and upgrades will be made to the spa and fitness center. The Cape Codder restaurant will be turned into space for the ballroom. Upgrades to the kitchen are in the works. The JFK ballroom will be transformed with new walls, flooring, lights, and ceiling fans. The outdoor pool and hot tub will be renovated, and the Salty Rim food truck will be poolside for guests who want to order food and drinks. Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod is a franchise. Guests staying at resorts in Florida to Lake Tahoe will have similar experiences, Anderson said. But while Lindquist must follow certain Margaritaville standards, Lindquist could come up with a Cape Cod-specific beverage or menu item. The project is one of the biggest for Lindquist, Anderson said. Between 50 to 100 construction workers are on site on any given day. A grand reopening will be held when construction is complete, which Anderson expects to be in late summer, and the public will be invited. Coastal resiliency. Focus shifts from historical to projected sea rise by Suryatapa Chakraborty of the BU State House program. With a consistent breach of the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold to mitigate the effects of climate change, our planet's been experiencing an accelerated rate of warming. Coastal resiliency has moved to the forefront of all conversations, but whether these efforts will be sustainable in the future is a question that remains unanswered. The rate at which we need to plan for the future needs to be sped up because we're already seeing impacts today, said Heidi Ricci, Director of Policy and Advocacy at Mass Audubon, a New England-based nature conservation organization. Massachusetts has 1,519 miles of shoreline, with more than a third of it belonging to the Cape Cod region. These coastal regions are vulnerable to climate change as they're directly impacted by the rising sea level, which is causing frequent flooding, coastal erosion, loss of coastal habitats, and more frequent storms. Mass DEP has proposed changes to the Chapter 91 regulations, which were formally established in 1866, which governs activities and projects on coastal and inland waterways. The regulatory changes were proposed in January. The public comment period, which was initially supposed to end in March, ended on April 30th. The new regulations, Resilience 1.0, for the very first time takes into account the projected sea level rise, as opposed to the historic sea level rise standard. Additionally, there are proposed changes to building considerations, engineering and construction standards, clarification on activities not requiring a permit or license, among other changes. They're very important and actually long overdue, so we're very supportive and happy to see that those regulations are moving forward, Ricci said. For Ricci, the only major gap in the updated regulations is on easing the process of acquiring permits for restoration projects, such as salt marshes and other natural habitat restoration. She said it's not a flaw, but it needs additional work. So much of our wetlands have been ditched, drained, fragmented, impacted. We really need to restore these wetlands because they're so important for climate resiliency, Ricci said. She also noted the importance of salt marshes to coastal resilience, adding that we're losing the salt marshes at a faster rate now because of climate change, and their restoration should be made a priority. They absorb the impact of waves and storm flows. They sequester carbon. They're important habitats, Ricci said. The Massachusetts Office of Coastal Zone Management offers the Coastal Habitat Program, which aims to protect and restore natural habitats through data-driven resiliency efforts. The program has a salt marsh working group consisting of researchers and practitioners whose primary goal is to monitor salt marshes, prioritize their conservation and restoration, and raise awareness about their vulnerability to climate change. In 2017, the Cape Cod Commission launched the Resilient Cape Cod Project, which was completed 2 years later. The project, which was funded by National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration's Regional Coastal Resilience Grant, focused on investigating environmental and socioeconomic effects of regional coastal resilience strategies. As a result of that effort, the Cape Cod Coastal Planner, a map-based decision support tool for implementing adaptation strategies to sea level rise and other coastal hazards, was born. The Commission's Natural Resource Program Manager, Heather McElroy, said that the tool allows people to look at the planning layers to understand where flooding is happening, where erosion is happening, look at structures, critical facilities, and low-lying roads that would be impacted by those coastal threats. She added that when new information becomes available, the planner is updated with it. Although it's a process, it's not something that's necessarily done on an annual basis. In 2021, the Commission, in partnership with Woods Hole Group, a company that provides coastal and environmental services through engineering and modeling, launched the Low-Lying Roads Project, which is coming to an end in June. The project's aim was to identify and prioritize low-lying roads in the 15 towns of Cape Cod and strategize steps that can be taken to protect those roads. Joseph Famely, Woods Hole Group's Climate and Sustainability Team Lead, said that the idea was to help the towns learn about flood risk using the Massachusetts Coast Flood Risk Model, which helped planners and policymakers build resilience while planning for future changes. Family added that they also incorporated local input from towns to select higher priority road segments. We kind of thought about different ways you could adapt a road, whether it was elevating it or moving it back. Shannon Holst, floodplain specialist with Cape Cod Cooperative, said that the biggest issue is that people don't understand the potential for future sea level rise and subsequent storms that could happen. If they're on a floodplain, the fact that they haven't flooded yet is just good luck on their part. It doesn't mean that they will never flood there. She added that it depends on the town officials and administration to decide the strategies they want to implement in terms of coastal resiliency. A lot of the things that towns do are on 5-year planning license, which is nothing. The focus should be on flexibility, according to Famely. He said building basic infrastructure that's able to accommodate different design and different iterations over time is the right course of action. But there are places that in the near future could be beyond saving. If that's an area that's at a high risk of repetitive inundation, past a certain tipping point, it doesn't make sense to keep building, Family said. While the current efforts and projects buy some time, everything ultimately points toward the word retreat. Sooner or later, that's going to be the ultimate step when the coastal plains get inundated because of extreme sea level rise. It's going to be the most difficult conversation government officials at the state and local levels will have to navigate, according to Ricci. No one wants to uproot people from their homes. Chris Powicki, chair of Sierra Club's Cape and Islands group, believes that the ultimate solution is to dramatically and rapidly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. For Powicki, in the long run, armoring, which is a way of building physical structures to protect shorelines, is not the answer. Retreat is. We've already locked in a certain amount of sea level rise into the future, and without retreats, we're going to face continued damage and loss. He added that the challenge would be to convince property owners to move further back from the beach. Holst agrees that retreat is a difficult topic, and it's not as simple to implement. People love their homes. There are town budgets. A lot of tax dollars come from waterfront properties, so there's a lot to consider in that. Andrew Gottlieb, executive director of Association to Preserve Cape Cod, said that the notion that armoring the coastline will slow coastal erosion is something that property owners favor as it protects their lands. But this is problematic as they also tend to result in the absence of a beach. He added that more serious efforts need to be put into reversing the cause of the problem of sea level rise. I don't know that we're going to be able to keep elevating to the point where we can stay above the rising waters, Gottlieb said. The need for a managed retreat and enhancement of natural systems is the solution, Gottlieb said. Gregory Berman, Chatham's Natural Resources Director, said that the winter storms have been pushing a lot of water up into low-lying areas, and this phenomenon has been happening more frequently. In 1,000 years, the properties aren't going to be viable. In 5 years, they probably will be, so in that in-between time, that's really where the rubber meets the road with these adaptation methods, Berman said. While there are various techniques that can be employed to protect the land and build resilience through gray and green infrastructural developments, Berman said we really don't want to eliminate some of the aspects of the greener end of that spectrum. Green infrastructure refers to natural restoration efforts such as salt marsh restoration, rainwater harvesting, land conservation. Gray infrastructure, on the other hand, refers to man-made structures that armor coastlines but aren't sustainable. Gottlieb agreed and said that building green infrastructure is a better solution as compared to building gray infrastructure. That's our best way of fighting back. Climate change has put a timer on a lot of state and nationwide efforts, coastal resiliency being one of them. Berman believes that the people will ultimately have to adapt as the beach changes and living with those changes. He added that sea level rise has only been accelerating and people are witnessing the impacts of the rising water level through frequent storms and flooding, among other extreme weather events. We can't stop working on these issues because climate change is not stopping, and we need to be prepared for more and more change, Powicki said. The next headline in today's Cape Cod Times, dated May 20th, a Monday: Hospital to pay $24.3 million over false Medicare claims, by Zane Razak. Cape Cod Hospitals agreed to pay more than $24.3 million to resolve allegations that it didn't follow Medicare cardiac procedure rules, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Investigators found that the hospital's physicians did not perform patient evaluations for transcatheter aortic valve replacements, a procedure known as TAVR that involves replacing a patient's damaged heart valve with an artificial one, in compliance with the rules for Medicare reimbursement. From November 2015 to December 2022, Cape Cod Hospital knowingly submitted hundreds of claims to Medicare for TAVR procedures that did not comply with the applicable national coverage determination requirements, according to the settlement, meaning the hospital submitted millions of dollars of false claims to Medicare in violation of the False Claims Act. So what did Cape Cod Hospital do wrong, according to the U.S. Attorney? In some cases, not enough physicians evaluated a patient's suitability for the procedure, while other times physicians didn't document and share their findings with the medical team that was responsible for the TAVR procedure. Medicare permitted coverage for this newly developed cardiac procedure only under certain conditions to ensure patient safety. Cape Cod Hospital ignored those rules and received millions of dollars from Medicare to which it was not entitled. This conduct persisted for years despite internal warnings, said Acting U.S. Attorney Joshua S. Levy for the District of Massachusetts in a statement. This investigation and settlement ensure that patient safety is prioritized over a hospital's bottom line. In a statement, Cape Cod Hospital noted that the settlement did not allege that patients who received TAVR procedures were harmed or that Cape Cod Hospital billed Medicare for procedures that were not performed. Many of the physicians who provided the services at issue are no longer employed by or contracted to provide services at the hospital, according to the hospital. Cape Cod Hospital has since, quote, augmented its documentation practices and believes its heart-teamed clinicians, which now include talented cardiac surgeons from Beth Israel Lahey Health, provide outstanding medical care in compliance with all applicable Medicare requirements. In a statement, Bruce Johnston, chairman of the Board of Trustees, praised the leadership of CEO Michael Lauf and his management team and highlighted the upcoming Edwin Barbie Patient Care Pavilion, which he said will house a new cancer center, consolidate the hospital's cardiology programs, and add 32 new medical and surgical beds to address demand. Though it's unfortunate to be in this situation, the Board of Trustees remains confident in and supportive of the organization's leadership. During Michael Lauf's tenure, Cape Cod Hospital has been recognized numerous times for its excellent care and has significantly enhanced its operational and financial position, said Johnston. We look forward to a bright and strong future under the continued leadership of Mike Lauf and his management team. Richard Zellman is a former Cape Cod Hospital cardiologist who founded and ran the hospital's TAVR program. He filed a lawsuit against the hospital in 2022, alleging that he was fired after blowing the whistle on what he called the hospital's unethical practices prioritizing profit over patient care. Zellman will receive approximately $4.36 million of the settlement as the whistleblower. On his website, Zellman's attorney, Greg Shapiro, called the settlement amount the largest ever False Claims Act recovery from a Massachusetts hospital. Dr. Zellman's gratified the government conducted a thorough investigation and that the case has been successfully resolved, said Shapiro. What will Cape Cod Hospital have to do? Cape Cod Hospital's also entered into a 5-year corporate integrity agreement with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of the Inspector General, which provides for an annual review of its paid Medicare claims by an independent review organization, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Cape Cod Healthcare, based in Hyannis, operates 2 acute care hospitals, Cape Cod Hospital and Falmouth Hospital, along with a home care and hospice agency, a skilled nursing and rehabilitation facility, an assisted living facility, and a number of health programs. The hospital no longer has a contract with Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, which had partnered with Cape Cod Hospital's Open Heart program since its inception in 2002. The hospital has been affiliated with Beth Israel Lahey Health since 2022. Keeping it local, moving to the Cape and Islands section. Failed Prop 2.5 questions at Chatham Town Meeting. Pass at election by Marianne Bragg in Chatham. At Thursday's annual town election, Select Board incumbents Corey John Metters and Dean P. Nicastro won out against Brian Michael Phillips for 2 seats on the Select Board. Each term lasts for 3 years. It was the only contested race on the ballot. Metters received 824 votes and Nicastro received 716 votes, according to preliminary results. Phillips received 291. In other races, Bradford Lewis Schiff was elected to the Monomoy Regional School Committee. William Litchfield was elected moderator. Alan H. Mowry was elected to the Housing Authority. Voter turnout was 17%, with 1,049 votes cast out of 6,077 registered voters. Question 1 on the ballot asked voters whether the town should be exempt from Proposition 2.5 to pay for bonds issued to upgrade the transfer station at 97 Sam Ryder Road. The vote was 608 in favor, 401 against. The second ballot question asked voters to approve an $11.4 million waterfront infrastructure bond to pay for various projects, including the one at the waterfront parcel on 90 Bridge Street. The vote was 604 in favor, 407 against. Both of the questions failed to get a 2/3 majority vote during Monday night's town meeting. The other story is a photo shoot with a caption, "Waiting on Technology to Solve Problems? Not Always a Good Idea," by Steve Heslip. Wait for it. a phrase popular these days on the internet, advising viewers to watch the entire video clip lest they miss a great ending. Hard to believe that a 90-second production would require extra patience to sit through. Attention spans are getting shorter as our brains try to keep up with the 21st century. An internet search for attention span will bring up pages of statistics. Google's search engine churned out numerous studies citing, quote, a goldfish has a 9-second attention span compared with the average human at 8.25 seconds. A dubious claim that would seem hard to prove and statistically insignificant. A deeper dive of the studies reveals that indeed such claims have been debunked. But as a parent who tended the family's long-lived goldfish Bucky, I can say the fish often seemed much more attentive around feeding time than our kids did at the dinner table. The one area that seems to be advancing when it comes to staying focused, photography. Read the list of features on every camera, from the tiny lens behind a cell phone to professional rigs. Technology promises a sharply focused photograph of any moving object. Cameras have face recognition and even pet recognition, locking in on the subject, tracking it, and maintaining focus. Thinking I could master a new skill, I took out the camera manual and read the autofocus chapter. Scrolling through menus, I finally located and activated the face recognition focus feature. So, off to find a subject. What could be more Cape Cod than a herring gull at a herring run? Gulls have good human tolerance. I had framed up a bird posing patiently next to a "no taking of herring" sign. Cliché, but a fun photo. This should be easy. The gull was front lit and still. The small focusing square in the viewfinder started to search. It hovered over the eye, but then darted back to the fish on the sign. The decisive moment here was to be when the gull would turn toward the sign, appearing to read it. The darting focus square had proved its incompetence. I switched off autofocus, adjusted the lens manually, and was in focus when the look happened, reaffirming the old photographer's adage yet again, hurry up and wait, preferably in manual focus mode. Our final local story, we're to check out Fagawi Race Sailboats by Courtney Jacobs. There's one event on Cape Cod and the islands that signifies summertime is here. All hands on deck as it's time to set sail for the 53rd annual Fagawi Race Weekend, May 24th through 26th. The sailing regatta began in the 1970s and has been one of the biggest events on the Cape ever since. On the opening day, May 24th, you can do some Fagawi shopping as early as 9 a.m. at the Hyannis Yacht Club on the lower level. Later that day, there'll be a welcome party at the same location at 3 p.m. On Saturday, May 25th, the annual race will take place. It'll start at the Hyannis Port Jetty and end in the vicinity of the entrance to Nantucket Harbor. Spectators will be able to enjoy the view from Calmus Beach as boats make their way to the start line from 8 to 10 a.m. At the conclusion of the race, there'll be sponsored engagements at the newly renovated and reopened, as of April 2024, Nantucket Boat Basin docks, and a variety of Nantucket restaurants to enjoy as well. On the final day, May 26th, there'll be more sponsored engagements at the Nantucket Boat Basin's docks. Also, a Fagawi Awards presentation at a time and location that has not yet been determined yet. You can contact Courtney Jacobs at cjacobs, that's C-J-A-C-O-B-S, at capecodonline.com. And you can follow him on X or Twitter at CJ-journalist. In the insect world, two types of cicadas emerge for a noisy few weeks by Emily DeLetter of USA Today. Trillions of periodical cicadas from two broods are emerging from their underground habitats in over a dozen states this year, filling the air and creating a lot of noise in the process. There are two broods hitting a combined 17 states this year. The brood 19, XIX, located mainly in the southeast, and the brood 13, XII, in the Midwest. Illinois and Iowa will be host to both broods, which have not emerged together since 1803. Some of these cicadas have been spotted already emerging, but how long will they be around this year? And how long do they stay underground between emergence years? According to Cicada Mania, the cicadas began to emerge from their underground habitats when the soil 8 inches underground reaches 64 degrees, and the emergence is often triggered by a warm rain. Thanks to warm temperatures, cicadas have already been spotted above ground in states across the southeast and the Midwest. How long cicadas live depends on their brood and if they're an annual or periodical species. The 2 periodical broods this summer are Brood 19, which have a 13-year life cycle, and Brood 13, which have a 17-year life cycle. Once male and female periodical cicadas have mated and the latter have laid their eggs, the insects will die after spending only a few weeks above ground, anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks after first emerging. That means many of this year's periodical cicadas are set to die in June, though some could die off in late May or July, depending on when they emerged. The nymphs of annual cicadas remain underground from 2 to 5 years, according to the Missouri Department of Conservation. These cicadas are called annual because some members of the species emerge as adults each year. The female cicadas lay eggs in holes made in tree branches and shrubs, National Geographic reported. The eggs will hatch after 6 to 10 weeks, and the cicada nymphs will burrow themselves into the ground, attaching to the tree's roots. The cicadas will remain underground for a dormant period of 2 to 17 years, depending on the species. Then they emerge in adult form, according to National Geographic. And Olivia Munson from USA Today contributed to that report. We're at the midway point in our reading. Regular listeners are aware it's at this stage that we move to a different kind of local news, which is the obituaries and death notices that are listed in the paper that day. Our first obituary is of Janet Rigo of Centerville, who passed on May 12th. She was born on May 30th, 1933 in Utica, New York, and graduated from Syracuse University's School of Music, attending the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. In August of 1977, she married Paolo A. Rigo, an exchange Fulbright scholar from Florence, Italy, and they lived in Rome, Milan, and Florence until finally retiring on Cape Cod. Paolo died on May 5th of 2012. Janet asked that no services be planned. The other obituaries of John A. Byland of Falmouth, who passed on May 8th at the age of 74. John loved animals, but especially cats, the arts, especially music and writing, Red Sox, ice cream, and classic automobiles. He is survived by 2 ex-wives and his 5 children and many loving friends. No services are listed. That completes the obituaries and death notices listed in the Cape Cod Times of May 20th, 2024. Moving into the national world, because we have completed all of the local news that's in the Times for today, Dow reassures investors, S&P more telling for 401k, by Bailey Schultz and Paul Davidson. This is from the front page of today's Cape Cod Times. The Dow Jones Industrial Average hit a new milestone on Friday, closing above 40,000 for the first time, underscoring the stock market's resilience despite volatile inflation and uncertainty surrounding the prospect of Federal Reserve interest rate cuts. The significance is psychological, said Jason Ware, Chief Investment Officer of Albion Financial Group. For investors, it makes us feel like we're doing the right thing. And for those not in the market, it's a clarion call. Make sure you're invested in the market so you're benefiting from the compounding effects over time. You better be in the room, he said. The Dow closed up 134 points, or 0.34%, to end the day at 40,003.59. The S&P 500 gained 0.12%, while the NASDAQ Composite slipped 0.074%. The Dow's latest spike was prompted by Wednesday's inflation report, which showed inflation cooling for the first time in months. Investors have taken that report as affirmation that the Fed could move forward with interest rate cuts as soon as September. Data showing softening retail sales and a stronger than expected first quarter earnings reporting period have also bolstered investors' confidence, according to Sam Stovall, chief investment strategist at CFRA Research. The Dow has gained more than 6% this year. Stocks had taken a tumble in April as investors grew concerned about the Fed pushing back interest rate cuts to deal with inflation's stickiness. The index began to recover this month as new reports indicated job growth slowing more than expected, cooling inflation, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell reiterating that more interest rate hikes are unlikely. Investors are anticipators, and they are enthusiastically anticipating a cut in interest rates, Stovall said. They're also calmed by the likelihood we will be avoiding a recession. But the arbitrary number means little for investors' retirement funds. With only 30 blue-chip stocks, the index isn't the best measure for 401k strength. A better measure is the S&P 500, since 401k accounts are more likely to include an S&P 500 index fund than one that's tied to the Dow. The stock market index tracks the performance of 500 of the largest public companies in the country. The S&P 500 has been hitting its own milestones this year. The index ended the day above 5,300 for the first time Wednesday and closed at 5,303 on Friday. The downside to the Dow topping 40,000 is that it could spook some investors into thinking the market's pricey and may be poised for a pullback. Generally, it's taken less and less time for the Dow to reach its historic milestones as the blue chip index has risen, because a jump of 10,000 becomes less in percentage terms. It took 26 years or so for the Dow to climb from 1,000 to 10,000, and 17.8 years to go from 10,000 to 20,000, a period of slow growth that followed the dot-com bust in the early 2000s and then the Great Recession of 2007-2009. It then took nearly 4 years for the Dow to clamber from 20,000 to 30,000, and about 3 years to get to 40,000 following the strong recovery from the pandemic. The next headline, toxins reach the Great Lakes, a study says. Rain and air pollute water with forever chemicals, by Caitlin Luby of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, USA Today Network in Wisconsin. A considerable amount of forever chemicals are making their way into the Great Lakes via the air and rain, a new study says. In fact, the findings published in Environmental Science and Technology show that it's the primary way PFAS end up in Lake Superior, offering a stark reminder that even the lake that's considered the most pristine isn't safe from the toxic chemicals. PFAS, or per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, are a class of thousands of compounds that are widespread and long-lasting in the environment. They contaminate drinking water and build up in fish and wildlife, posing many health risks to humans, including certain kinds of cancers, reproductive harm, and liver and thyroid problems. The Great Lakes are the freshwater heart of North America. The basin is home to 10% of the U.S. population and 30% of the Canadian population, and the lakes providing drinking water for more than 40 million people. Reducing the amount of PFAS that go into the Great Lakes is a challenge that will require looking at every source that brings them there, said Marta Venier, an environmental chemist at Indiana University who led the research. PFAS come in different sizes. PFAS are used in a lot of different products like firefighting foam, nonstick cookware, food wrappers, laundry detergents, personal care products, and outdoor gear. They're popular because they make products waterproof as well as stain and grease resistant. The chemicals are grouped into two different size classes, short and long chain. Short chain PFAS are much smaller, and because of that can easily travel long distances hitchhiking on rain and air particles. Many long-chain PFAS were phased out and replaced with short-chain ones because it was believed that there were fewer health risks, Venier said. The risks were greatly underestimated, she said. Lake Ontario's water had the most PFAS. The scientists collected air and rain samples at 5 sites around the basin, 2 urban locations, Chicago and Cleveland, 1 rural site at Sturgeon Point in New York, and 2 remote sites, Eagle Harbor, Michigan, and Sleeping Bear Dunes, Michigan. The team also collected lake water samples throughout each of the 5 lakes. Combined with existing information on other sources of PFAS like tributaries that drain into the lakes and wastewater treatment plants, the researchers were able to figure out what lake has the highest concentration of PFAS in the water and where most of those chemicals came from. Lake Ontario had the highest concentration of PFAS in its water. It was followed by Lakes Michigan, Erie, and Huron. According to the study, the easternmost lake likely had the highest levels because it's the most urbanized, and it's the lake that all the others drain into. Lake Superior had the lowest concentration of the toxic chemicals. Most of the PFAS found in lakes were the short-chain, more mobile kind. The study showed that when it comes to rain, it didn't matter whether it was Chicago or Sleeping Bear Dunes, PFAS levels were the same across all the lakes. This is the first time we've seen that, Venier said. Usually polluted levels are higher near urban centers, like with PCBs or pesticides. On the other hand, PFAS levels in the air samples were higher near urban sites and lower in the remote locations. Overall atmosphere delivery through rain and air is a significant pathway for PFAS making their way into the upper Great Lakes, especially Lake Superior. According to the study, almost all the PFAS that wind up in Lake Superior come from the atmosphere, compared to wastewater treatment plants and tributaries draining into the largest Great Lake. In Lake Michigan, roughly half comes from the air and rain. The scientists also looked at the balance of PFAS going into the lakes versus being discharged out. According to the study, Lakes Superior, Michigan, and Huron are accumulating PFAS faster than they're getting rid of them. Earlier this year, the federal government set the first national drinking water limit on certain kinds of PFAS. While the study didn't directly test drinking water, Venier said that reducing PFAS in both the environment and drinking water will mean controlling all sources and taking a broad, multi-pronged approach. But of the biggest challenges that remains is the lack of data on where PFAS are coming from. Venier was surprised at how little information there was on the concentration of PFAS in tributaries as well as downstream of wastewater treatment plants. These are data gaps that we need to fill before we can have a solid picture of all the ins and outs of PFAS in the Great Lakes, she said. The next headline, 5 American doctors allowed to leave Gaza, others remain. Written by Hanan Adeli of NorthJersey.com, the USA Today Network. 5 Americans who had been trapped in Gaza after Israel sealed borders, preventing their crossing, departed the besieged conflict zone early Friday. They were part of a medical team that went to the war zone to provide emergency medical care. Gada Abu Kuwayik from Todowa, New Jersey, said they left at about 6 a.m. local time, reaching the U.S. Embassy about 4 hours later. Other American doctors on the team were expected to follow, but it was not clear when they would be able to leave. The 19-member team entered Gaza on May 1st and had been stuck there since Israel seized and closed the border crossing into Egypt, cutting off access to humanitarian aid and medical crews. The team has 10 Americans, including Dr. Adam Hamawi of Princeton, New Jersey, who saved the life of Senator Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat from Illinois, in 2004 in Iraq, where he served as a combat trauma surgeon in the U.S. Army. Abu Kuwayik, CEO of CureMed Pharmacy, said the whole team should be allowed to leave, not just Americans. The way we left is not the way we should leave, she said. We came as a team. She and others are also deeply worried, Abu Kuwayik said, because Israel has said it will not permit a team of replacement aid workers to enter Gaza. The team has been waiting in Cairo. What about the other people, Abu Kuwayik said. We're just going to leave them this way? All the supplies and medication we brought with us, it's almost done. So what are they going to do? The team is staying in Israel until it can coordinate travel to the United States, the State Department told the office of U.S. Representative Bill Pascrell, who's a Democrat from New Jersey, on Friday. Pascrell, among other state and federal officials, had pressured Israeli leaders to allow the team to depart. The medical workers said they were shocked by the destruction, the frequent bombings, and lack of basic medical supplies, including anesthesia, wound care, and blood. The team traveled to Gaza with the Palestinian American Medical Association under the umbrella of the World Health Organization. Another medical team from the Texas-based nonprofit FAJR Scientific also was trapped when borders were sealed. Dr. Mossab Nasser, CEO of FAJR Scientific, said his team also evacuated on Friday. The reality is very different from the shots you see on TV. It's a million times worse, Nasser said in an interview with British TV host Piers Morgan, describing that it looked like a place where a hurricane, earthquake, and tsunami had all hit simultaneously. While looking at the destroyed buildings, I kept asking myself, how can you create and make such destruction in such a record time? His team of 12 Americans, 3 Britons, 1 Egyptian, and 1 Omani had to flee their safe houses twice due to bombings. The level of terror at night was unbearable, he said. In an interview Thursday, Abu Kuwait recalled heartbreaking cases, including a 10-year-old boy brought to the hospital whose family had been killed and who suffered burns on 70% of his body. He died 3 days later. Another time, an orphaned 8-year-old boy had come looking for insulin for his 5-year-old brother, but they had none to give. You don't have resources, she said. You don't have medical equipment. You don't have the right medication. Many medications are out of stock. One of the biggest needs, she said, is staff. Local staffing has been depleted, especially in recent days, as many are evacuating with their families out of Rafah. In a video posted on the Palestinian American Medical Association social media pages, Hamawi described seeing a constant stream of injured civilians and feeling the hospital shake from repeated bombings. The next headline, Nippon Steel executive to meet U.S. stakeholders, by Urvi Dugar, Akanksha Kushi, and Yuka Obayashi of Reuters in Tokyo. Japan's Nippon Steel said Saturday its vice chairman, Takahiro Mori, a key negotiator for its planned purchase of U.S. Steel, will travel to the U.S. this week to meet stakeholders as part of the continued efforts to complete this deal. A spokesperson for Nippon Steel in Tokyo said Mori will visit the United States to continue dialogues with various stakeholders for the deal to gain a better understanding. She declined to give further details, such as who Mori will be meeting with and how long he'll stay in the U.S. U.S. Steel deferred to the Japanese company for comment. In December, Nippon Steel offered nearly $15 billion to take over U.S. Steel, drawing resistance from both Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican former President Donald Trump, as well as the United Steelworkers Union. To win support from the union, Nippon Steel has pledged to move its U.S. headquarters to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where U.S. Steel is based. They're offering commitments on job security and additional investments if the deal goes through. Bloomberg reported on Friday that Mori will travel to Pittsburgh this week to meet with local staff and elected officials, citing people briefed on the matter. The Japanese steelmaker expects to close the deal in the second half of 2024, compared with its prior deadline of the second to third quarter, after the Department of Justice sought more details and materials in an antitrust review. The European Commission already approved the deal. Despite mounting opposition, an overwhelming majority of U.S. Steel shareholders voted in favor of the deal in April. A macabre headline, Bodies Going Unclaimed as Funeral Costs Rise in Canada, by Kia So-U and Anne Mailer-Paperney of Reuters in Toronto. Some Canadian provinces have logged a jump in unclaimed dead bodies in recent years, with next of kin citing funeral costs as a growing reason for not collecting loved ones' remains. The phenomenon has prompted at least one province to build a new storage facility. Demand for memorial fundraisers has surged. The overall cost of a funeral in Canada at the top end has increased to about $6,400 from about $4,400 in 1998, according to industry trade group estimates. In Ontario, Canada's most populous province, the number of unclaimed dead bodies rose to 1,183 in 2023 from 242 in 2013, said Dirk Hoyer, the province's chief coroner. In most of those cases, next of kin were identified but unable to claim the body for a variety of reasons, with the most common being money. Finances went from being the reason for 20% of the total unclaimed bodies in 2022 to 24% in 2023. It's distressing because it's a person who's passed, and there's nobody, family, friends, or others, that are in a position to be able to provide instructions or plans for that person after their death, Hoyer said. Officially, in Ontario, a body is deemed unclaimed after 24 hours, but the coroner's office staff may spend weeks trying to locate next of kin, he said. If the relatives confirm they're unable to claim a body, the local municipality works with a funeral home to provide a simple burial. In the meantime, the body is kept in a morgue or temperature-controlled storage facility. There's always been families that are in need of additional assistance, but I've never seen the number of unclaimed remains that currently exist, said Alan Cole, owner of the Toronto-based funeral home McKinnon and Bowes. In Quebec, the number of unclaimed bodies grew to 183 in 2023 from 66 in 2013. In Alberta, the number rose to 200 in 2023 from 80 in 2016. Historically, the Health Sciences Centre in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador did not encounter enough unclaimed remains to warrant long-term storage, a spokesperson for Newfoundland Health Services told Reuters. Now, in the wake of an uproar over unclaimed bodies kept in freezers outside the hospital, the province is constructing a permanent storage unit to hold remains. Location matters. An adult single grave with the Mount Pleasant group on average costs a little over $2,000, but the price in Midtown Toronto was nearly $25,000 as of April 1st, according to the website of the cemetery, funeral, and cremation provider across the Greater Toronto area. The price excludes opening and closing of the grave, funeral, tombstone, taxes, and other items. A funeral can cost $1,400 to $8,800, said Funeral Services Association of Canada President Jeff Weaver, up from about $1,300 to $5,900 in 1998. Government support for funerals has failed to keep pace with rising funeral costs, advocates have said. The federal government announced an $1,800 top-up to the $1,800 death benefit in the Canada Pension Plan in the April budget. There's a bill in Congress proposing a ban on .50 caliber rifles by John C. Moritz of the Austin American-Statesman of the USA Today Network in Austin, Texas. 3 congressional Democrats introduced a bill last week calling for a ban on private sales of the civilian version of a .50 caliber rifle, which the military used to bring down targets such as light aircraft and tactical ground vehicles. Unlike similar and largely unsuccessful efforts to curb the sale of other military-style rifles, the bills by U.S. Representatives Joaquin Castro and Veronica Escobar of Texas and Maxwell Frost of Florida is not a reaction to the spate of deadly mass shootings across the country. Instead, it's aimed at addressing the resale of the so-called sniper rifles to transnational criminal organizations, commonly called cartels, operating in Mexico and other Latin American countries. When I speak to leaders in Latin America and the Caribbean, their number one request is for Congress to stop American weapons of war from falling into the hands of the gangs that are destabilizing their countries, Castro said in a news release. Especially in Mexico, access to .50 caliber rifles has fundamentally altered the balance of power between criminal organizations and the government, and it's allowed cartels to become virtually untouchable. Federal agencies over the past several years have arrested numerous people believed to be cartel members in possession of weapons, including .50 caliber rifles that had been legally purchased in the U.S. and then resold across the border. In late March, the Justice Department announced it arrested 5 people in South Texas who were charged with trafficking military-grade firearms to a drug cartel in Mexico. Among the weapons seized were Barrett .50 caliber rifles. The entire cache was sold for $169,900, which the federal agency said was a markup from the retail price of the guns so one of the suspects could derive a profit for himself. The Louisville Courier-Journal, part of the USA Today Network, reported in 2022 that a joint investigation by U.S. and Mexican officials determined that a .50 caliber rifle purchased in the U.S. and sold to cartels helped bring down a military helicopter that was part of a secretive 2015 raid to arrest a leader of the powerful cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, or CJNG. Congress can have meaningful debates about broader gun safety reform, but we should all be able to agree that U.S. gun manufacturers should not be selling the weapons that Mexican cartels use to down military helicopters and attack police convoys, Castro said. According to the Giffords Law Center, a firearms safety advocacy group, California, Connecticut, Illinois, New Jersey, and the District of Columbia have enacted bans on at least some models of .50 caliber rifles. Earlier this month, the NRA, a leading firearms rights advocacy organization, hailed a huge victory as a Colorado Senate committee scuttled a proposal to ban certain weapons that have been used in mass shootings, including .50 caliber rifles, on May 5th. The proposed federal bill, which its backers call the Stop Arming Cartels Act of 2024, faces an uphill road in the Republican-controlled U.S. House. They like their guns. Ohio lawmakers want to repeal HIV-related laws, by Laura A. Bischoff in Columbus, Ohio. Ohio has laws on the books that make it a crime for people living with HIV to donate or sell blood, spit on someone, or fail to inform a sex partner of their virus status, even if there's no risk of transmission. A bipartisan coalition aims to repeal 6 punitive HIV-related laws in Ohio. Republican State Representative Sarah Carruthers introduced House Bill 498 to repeal a law that makes it a crime to donate or sell contaminated blood, and introduced House Bill 513 to repeal 5 other HIV-related laws. So far, 192 cases involving the HIV laws have been prosecuted, including 104 harassment or spitting instances and 60 felonious assault cases, according to the Ohio Health Modernization Movement. Ohio is among 26 states that have such laws. Kelly Bean of Akron left prison in 2018 after serving 5 years for felonious assault. She was charged under the law that makes it a crime to not tell a sex partner she's HIV positive. Bean said the felony record now makes it difficult to find housing and employment. I couldn't even get a job at McDonald's because I've got a felonious assault. And yeah, they don't care that it's because I'm HIV positive, Bean said. So yes, these laws need to change for the betterment, for all of us. Advocates for repealing the laws argue that they're based on myths, not facts and science, and people can be charged with crimes even if the virus isn't transmitted. The laws haven't been updated since the 1990s. Laws that criminalize HIV are based on outdated information and are rooted in stigma, not science, said Dr. Ashley Lips, an assistant professor of infectious diseases at Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Some of the laws make the penalties harsher. For example, spitting on someone could result in a $2,500 fine and up to 12 months in jail, but the same behavior by someone living with HIV could result in a $10,000 fine and up to 3 years in prison. Spit is not an HIV transmission risk. The group faces a challenge where state lawmakers are more likely to adopt laws limiting the rights of LGBTQ+ people rather than expand protections and rights. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of today's Cape Cod Times of Monday, May 20th of 2024. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Remember our veterans. Bye for now.